When most people first come to Bali, I don't think they realize just how big and diverse this beautiful island is. You have everything from the bustling city center of Denpasar, the surfing paradise of Uluwatu, the spiritual hub of Ubud, and of course the absolutely magnificent nature of northern Bali, where you can truly experience the beauty of Balinese culture. It's not a surprise that Bali is one of the most popular places in the world to work remotely from, and having spent 3 months combined between 2 trips on this magical island, I will say that not all places here are ideal for working remotely as a digital nomad. So in today's video, I will be sharing with you guys my top 4 area recommendations and really breaking down what each has to offer, the approximate cost of living there, and also some potential cons that you might not be aware of until you get there. Well, hello friends. I am on my last couple of days here in Bali, and I wanted to sit down and do a video that some of you requested, asking about some of the best areas on the island for digital nomads. I'm also very happy to say that today's video is in partnership with Safety Wing, which is one of my favorite travel brands. So I will tell you guys about them a little bit later. But let's just jump straight into our list, starting with number 1, the Mecca of digital nomads, which is Canggu. Some people love it, some people hate it, but I don't think anybody can deny that Canggu is convenient. Like, Canggu is the place that I like to start my time in Bali if I really have a lot of work that I need to get done, as I did when I arrived from China. I had so much editing that I had to do that I was like, I need a strong, internet signal. I want to have a lot of beautiful places that I can work from, like whether it's co-working spaces or just like regular cafes. You can find every kind of beautiful aesthetic environment to work in with a strong internet connection in Canggu. The other really big draw for digital nomads is that this is really the place for networking. Canggu has so many different meetup events where you can meet other people, and obviously the nightlife is very big in Canggu, but truly the biggest con of Canggu is that it is very much a bubble. Unfortunately, there is very few locals that actually live in Canggu that don't work in tourism, so it is a bit of an odd place in a way where you almost feel like you are just in this immigrant sort of subgroup of Bali. It is not at all authentic to the island. The other negative is the cost. Like, this is the second most expensive place on my list after the next place that I mentioned. Let's use the same reference point that I will for all the other places as well, of like having a private room in a local guest house or a budget-friendly hotel. You can expect to pay at least 35 to 45 US dollars, I would say, for like a central, well-located place with good reviews. If you stay monthly, I think the prices really begin at $600 to $700 for that room. If you want your own villa or larger apartment fairly close to Canggu, I would say you have to pay a minimum of $1,500 US dollars to like $2,500 US if you want a super fancy, like luxe sort of place, and that's per month. Canggu by no means is that budget friendly. Of course, you can find some deals if you know where to look, if you get a local to really like you, but if you are just booking on Airbnb or like booking.com, no, the prices are not that low. Now, moving on to the second beautiful area on our list is the beach paradise of Uluwatu. This is definitely the most popular area for all sorts of tourists to visit in Bali, because this is where you can find the most beautiful beaches on the island. So understandably, that's what makes Uluwatu the most expensive area on the island, because a lot of the tourists that come to this area really drive up the prices of the hotel stays. Overall, I would say that you should expect to pay at least like 40 to 50 US dollars for a room per night, and it's not even going to be anything that fancy. If you're renting monthly, a room or a budget hotel might be about 800 to 1,000, And if you want your own villa, if you want your own apartment, like 2,000 to 3,000 plus easily. My other main issue with Uluwatu, and I promise I'm not trying to be negative, and to be fair, there are so many digital nomads, especially in the last couple of years, that have moved to this area, like primarily even my friends. My friends who live in Bali, they love Uluwatu and have all recently moved there from Canggu, so it is a very popular place. But I personally have had issues with the internet there, like in a lot of the different cafes and co-working spaces that I have been to. And by the way, there's really not a lot of co-working spaces in Uluwatu. I only found 2. So if you're a digital nomad and you know of some really good co-working spaces in Uluwatu, please post it in the comments, because I did not find them. But let's come back to the good. Once again, Uluwatu really is just one of the most beautiful places in the island. It has some of the best beaches. If you are a experienced surfer, and I mean experienced because the waves are very, very big in Uluwatu, this is really the place to go. I think they even have some surf competitions that happen here in the south. And if you are someone who doesn't really like the busyness of Canggu or even Ubud in its town site, Uluwatu is a lot more spread out, and you can find a lot of pockets of like quietness in there as well. So the pros of Uluwatu really would be the beaches. That's like the number one thing. Number 2 would be, you know, wellness. It is a very wellness centric kind of area, really fantastic for surfers. But the cons, in my opinion, is that the internet isn't really that good. It is very spread out. You need to have your own transport, which personally, at least for me, I like to walk. And third is, of course, that it is super expensive compared to all of the other places, and unless you have that bigger budget, I just don't see why it would make sense. Now, speaking of very expensive costs in Uluwatu, I actually wanted to share with you guys a very sad story that just happened to my friend who lives in that area, where she got in a bike accident. She was not driving, she was on a Grab, and while thankfully she's overall okay, still recovering, but she had a foot injury that happened that required surgery, and the private hospital in Bali wanted $15,000 US. Absolutely insane. Luckily, she was able to find another option that wasn't quite so expensive, and that is why I am very excited to be partnering with Safety Wing on this video, because I have been using their Nomad insurance for this whole 7-month trip in Bali, and it really does give me peace of mind that if something does happen, I am covered. The primary reason that I first chose Safety Wing is that they are one of the most affordable options on the market, with coverage for just a few dollars a day. But the other main reason that I really like them is that they have a pay-as-you-go subscription. Because the thing for me is that when I start a trip, it's usually with a one-way ticket. Like, I don't know when I'm going to be back. I don't know when my trip is going to come to an end. And sometimes things come up and plans get cut short or they get extended. So I personally really like that system where it just automatically keeps extending, and then when I do know when I am going home, then I'm just able to cancel. The other thing that I really like about Nomad insurance is that it has a $0 deductible, meaning that you are covered for even the smallest issues. So to all of my fellow digital nomads, I would greatly recommend having good travel medical insurance that you can rely on. And I would absolutely recommend Safety Wing as a provider. That is literally what I have used. I have paid for all of my own plans, and that is what I rely on. So if you guys want to try them out, I will have a link in the description. Would definitely recommend them. Now let's move on to the third area on my list, which is the incredibly beautiful Ubud. This is absolutely just one of my favorite places on the island because it really does have it all. Of course, Ubud is super touristy. Most people that visit Bali tend to take at least a day or two and come here. But as a place to stay long term, I really think it does have it all, because you do have the commercial business center that has absolutely everything you need. It has incredible restaurants, shops, really good co-working spaces, gyms, yoga studios. Like, very focused on wellness. Like if you are looking for great wellness options in Bali, I think Ubud may have even more than Canggu does. The other nice thing about Ubud is that it is quite a bit more walkable than the other places on our list, because it does have proper sidewalks in most areas. Like even though it does get quite busy sometimes, you can get to most of the popular places by foot. And the other obvious huge benefit is that because this is the most northern place on the list, this is where you really get to experience the incredible nature of the island. It is far more green. There is a lot more places to go for a walk, like go for an actual proper hike, or do day trips really up north and see the incredible waterfalls and rice paddy fields. Like this is truly the Bali that you see in postcards. A very big benefit of Ubud is that I have never had issues with the internet there, like either with my cell phone or with co-working spaces or in restaurants, cafes. It has always been a very high speed. Now, talking about price-wise, this is the other place where Ubud really shines, where I would say that it's at least 20 to 30% less expensive than Canggu, and definitely Uluwatu is. You can easily find a guest house or budget hotel room from like 25 USD to 35, I would say. If you're staying on a monthly basis, you could even find a central guest house room for maybe about 500 US dollars a month. And if you do want a really private villa that has it all, like your own sort of apartment, a lot of budget-friendly ones can be found just outside the outskirts of the city, where there is really beautiful nature. And in those cases, I would recommend staying outside of the city for a lot less than you would find in like Canggu or Uluwatu. You could easily find something in the like 1,000 to 1,500 range for your own private place. Food on a whole is also a lot less expensive in Ubud, which is great because there are a lot more locals that live in this area, so you are getting the more authentic experience of being on the island. So to end off this list with the negatives, the cons, honestly, in my opinion, there's not really a lot. Like Ubud overall is perfection to me. Not that I would spend my whole time there, because the one negative is that there is no beach. It would take at least an hour to drive to the closest beach. So if that's something that's super important to you, then no, Ubud is probably not the place for you. And if you're not into the spiritual wellness community, it may be a bit harder for you to meet people, because yeah, a lot of the people that are there, you know, they're kind of alternative hippie types. So if that's not your sort of crowd, then yeah, maybe Ubud isn't for you. And lastly, I guess I forgot to mention that sometimes it can rain a bit more in Ubud because they are so lush and green and more in the north. They get a bit more rainfall than the south. But that's really it. Like that's really all the negatives that I can think of in Ubud, because if I am looking for a place to really have the conveniences of a busy town site and having incredible nature, like there is no better place. And last, but certainly not least, the fourth place on my list that definitely is not mentioned enough when it comes to digital nomad options in Bali is Sanur. This is on the east coast, still fairly south in Bali, and is a bit more popular with senior citizens. Like from my experience, most of the tourists that are in Sanur are like Gen X to boomers. Like those are the majority of the people there as tourists. But there is a lot more long-term, you know, travelers, immigrants that live in Bali that have chosen Sanur because not only is it a lot quieter than the other three areas that I mentioned. It's not very big, like keep that in mind. It really is just one main street that has a lot of businesses that goes for, I don't know, about like 4 or 5 kilometers. But it is also all beaches on the east coast side. Not as nice of beaches as in Uluwatu, but still fairly nice beach. Another big surprise for me about Sanur is that it is definitely a blossoming digital nomad scene, because there was so many co-working spaces and digital nomad sort of meetups for the size of the area. And as someone who is a bit quieter and doesn't really like the whole late night nightlife kind of scene around me, I really liked Sanur because basically by 12 p.m. like everything was shut down, everything was closed. It was very, very quiet. So when it comes to the cost, as I said, it's quite similar to Ubud, I would say, where you can get a guest house budget hotel room from like 25 to 35 a night. If you're staying monthly, then maybe like about 500-600. And if you want your own apartment, maybe not so much villa. I didn't really see a lot of villa options in Sanur, but if you want your own apartment, there was definitely a lot to choose from, and on a much smaller budget than you would see in the other areas. You could definitely find something for like $1,000 a month. So as for the cons, as I mentioned before, the beach isn't quite as nice, and there's actually, 2 reasons for that. Number one is there is quite a bit more garbage than the other beaches, because I don't think there is as much investment to have people coming in and cleaning them up. And then the second issue is that Sanur is actually a port in Bali, and there's a lot of boats that go to the neighboring islands like Nusa Penida and the Gili Islands. So that's actually a benefit that I forgot to mention, is that from this area you can take boats to the surrounding really beautiful islands. So that is a benefit, but then that is the negative, that the boats do pollute the water, so it isn't quite as nice for swimming as the beaches in the south would be. The second con, which would only be a con for some people who are looking for this, is that I would say there wasn't as many like fancy options. There isn't quite as many trendy or really like aesthetic, Instagrammable kind of places. And then the third potential con, because for me it definitely isn't a con, because I think I've always just been older than I actually am, where it is, a much more senior demographic as the main, foreigners walking around the area. And even as far as like the digital nomads in that area, I would actually say that it's 30 plus or like 40 plus. There is not a lot of Gen Zers in this area unless they're like on vacation with their parents. So if you're a young person who's like going to socialize, no, this would not be the area for you. So that is it, friends. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you found it helpful in kind of deciphering which area of Bali may be best for you. It can definitely be intimidating, especially if you're coming to Bali for the first time, of like, how do the different areas differentiate between each other? Is there really a difference? Like, does the area have everything I'm looking for? I hope this video gave you some clarity. A very big thank you to Safety Wing for partnering with me on this video. As I said before, it is super important to have good travel medical insurance when you are on the road. So if you guys would like to try out one of their plans, I will have a link in the description. And if you are a digital nomad, I would love to hear from you and your experience of living and working in Bali. Which places did you like? Do you have any other suggestions? Please let us know in the comments. And yeah, I got 2 more days here in Bali, and then I will be heading to Singapore for about 11 days. So that will be exciting. Stay tuned for those videos. And as always, I am sending you so much love. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and keep being your own kind of beautiful. Bye, guys.